in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, and we are looking at one of Peter Paul Rubens' works, Venus and Adonis, which he painted in the mid-1630s.
Peter Paul Rubens was a 17th century Flemish artist who worked on an international scale throughout his career. Rubens received an extensive education, rich in the classics, and later served as a diplomat for the Spanish crown. Early in his life, Rubens traveled to Italy and Spain, where he voraciously copied the works of many artists. During one of his travels, Rubens sees Titian's version of Venus and Adonis in the Royal Collection in Spain. This painting now hangs in another gallery in the Met. As we will see in a bit, Rubens' painting is deeply indebted to Titian's earlier version of Venus and Adonis.
This scene is inspired by the story of Venus and Adonis from Ovid's Metamorphoses, completed in 8 AD. As the story goes, Cupid unintentionally pricks his mother Venus, the goddess of love, with an arrow, causing her to fall in love with Adonis, a mortal. Eventually, Adonis longs to go hunting, an activity which is synonymous with masculinity. Venus attempts to prevent him from fulfilling his masculinity, since hunting is a dangerous activity. Despite Venus's warnings, Adonis leaves her to hunt and is killed by a wild boar. Venus mourns his death by turning his blood into a red anemone, a short-living plant that would rebloom each year as a symbol of her everlasting love and grief. However, the moment of leaf-taking depicted here does not occur in Ovid's Metamorphoses. In the original version, Venus departs from Adonis in her swan-drawn chariot without any apparent remorse. Here, Rubens is inspired by Titian's own reinterpretation of the Ovidian myth.
About 70 years before Rubens' Venus and Adonis, Titian painted his adaptation of the myth for the occasion of Prince Philip II of Spain's marriage to Mary Tudor of England in 1560. This painting was fundamental to Rubens' own rendition of Venus and Adonis. Titian makes two major departures from the original text. Firstly, Titian imagines a moment where Venus struggles to hold Adonis back from going to hunt. While Adonis will inevitably slip from Venus' hold and die, Titian shows a moment of longing. Secondly, he also provides a different view of the female nude by choosing to depict Venus from the back.
It is interesting to observe the ways in which Rubens reflects on Titian's version of Venus and Adonis. It appears that he has borrowed the poses but flipped them, deciding instead to show Adonis on the left from the back and Venus on the right from the front. This adds to the heightened sensuality of the work, as the viewer is provided with a better view of the female nude body. Rubens had previously painted a scene of Venus and Adonis earlier in his career. However, Titian has influenced him to paint this composition of the figures. In Titian's version, the lovers face each other. Rubens borrows this pose for his version of the myth because it adds to the drama of the scene. Also like Titian, Rubens includes two dogs by Adonis's feet, who wait to accompany him on the hunt. However, Rubens chose to move Cupid to the forefront of the composition. Cupid clings to Adonis's legs and stares up at him. He has set this whole plan in motion and alludes to the disastrous consequences, begging him to stay.
This is why this painting is so interesting to look at. Rubens' Venus and Adonis heavily draws from the earlier Titian, yet serves as a critique where Rubens adds his own artistic imagination. In the 16th century, Titian departs from traditional text and offers a new approach to the myth of Venus and Adonis. Then, in the 17th century, Rubens' own Venus and Adonis directly reflects on Titian's work. Essentially, these two works are in dialogue with one another.
So why did Rubens paint this so many years after first seeing Titian's? This mythological subject may have been chosen for personal reasons. At the age of 53, Rubens married for a second time, this time to a woman named Helene, who was the 16-year-old daughter of a silk and tapestry merchant. Some scholars argue that Rubens frequently associated Helene with Venus, thus explaining the revived interest in mythological scenes.
In fact, a painting of Rubens' family showing the artist, his wife, and one of their sons hangs on the opposing wall of Venus and Adonis.
Now let's look more closely at this scene. Venus's body follows a gentle curve as she attempts to hold Adonis back. Her nude body is bathed by the warm light. Adonis is half turned as Venus clings to him, his muscled back exposed to the viewer. Here, there appears to be an interesting power dynamic between them. This is evident in each of their poses. Adonis is depicted upright, both feet firmly on the ground, as he starts to pull away from Venus in order to go hunt. The movement created by his leave-taking has a direct effect on Venus's pose, who desperately tries to hold him back. It is Adonis's presence that gives Venus purpose in this scene, as she tries to prevent his leave-taking and protect him from a tragic fate. So while Adonis is about to affirm his masculinity by embarking on the hunt, Venus is left behind, her pleas of danger is ignored.
The diagonal line of Adonis's arm leads the viewer's focus to Venus, who sits in an improbable position. Beneath her legs lies a black drape potentially symbolizing the inevitable mourning she will experience after Adonis's death. Unlike Adonis, she is depicted fully nude with the exception of a white drape concealing her genitalia. Her body is fleshy and curvy, conveying a sense of the softness of the female body.
Physical depiction of both figures reinforce the unequal gender dynamics in the scene. Adonis's body is athletic, and the muscles ripple softly beneath his bronze skin. In contrast with Adonis's muscled form, Venus's body is smooth, fleshy, and voluptuous. These two classical idealized bodies reflect the stereotypical representations of the strong male figure and the delicate female figure. Perhaps we can understand these physical traits to reflect the stereotypes of male and female personality traits. The soft, pure female body references a woman's emotional vulnerability, while the muscular man represents the rational and authoritative figure.
Definitely. The key focal point in the center of the painting, where Venus' arms struggle to hold Adonis back, creates a moment of tension between the two figures. While there is a visible physical effort exerted by Venus to hold him back, Adonis resists her pleas and physical restraint easily.
Yes, it appears as if he isn't using much force to resist Venus's pull at all, and he effortlessly moves away from her. While turning away from Venus, Adonis's right hand appears to almost make contact with her thigh, adding to the erotic charge of the moment. During this moment of leave-taking, their gazes are interlocked, with Venus's eyes welling up with tears. The loving gazes adds to the heightened drama of the moment, as the viewer sympathizes with the pair, knowing it will be the last time they will be together.
Now back to this idea of the unequal gender dynamics. It is interesting how Rubens chose to portray Venus in a powerless position. Her emotional vulnerability towards a mortal man is unexpected as she is a goddess. Here she is stripped of the agency she ordinarily possesses in Ovid's version of the myth, where she flies away on her chariot after warning Adonis about the dangers of the hunt. In this version, Rubens depicts her to be a woman in a state of emotional vulnerability, whose heart will be broken by the death of a mortal lover. Venus's main purpose in this painting is to hold Adonis back from the hunt. Her struggle to hold him back can be interpreted in two very different ways. One can understand Venus to be the wise lover who is aware of the danger of the hunt, and on the other hand, she can also be understood as a woman who has let her emotions control her actions as she attempts to hold him back from achieving his masculinity.
This more vulnerable interpretation of Venus depicts the goddess of love as a victim of her own emotions. Her rationality is overpowered by her destructive passion and uncontrollable love. Venus's actions and desires are solely based on her emotions, while Adonis listens to his rational thought, thus resisting the temptation of love.